Okay, Book 3 of the Psalms. This is the third major division of the Psalms. Psalm 73 to 89. A lot of these Psalms, at least the first half, this is one of the shorter books. Books 3 and 4 are the shortest books in the Psalms. They've only got about 16 or so Psalms each. And this is, this section in particular are the exile songs. They have most of them have the name Asaph attached to them. Asaph was a guy who was in David's court as one of his musicians, and presumably established some sort of school or tradition of musicians that continued on after him, and it took his name. It's hard to say whether or not Asaph himself actually wrote these psalms, or just someone writing in the name of Asaph, or someone who belonged to the school or the tradition of Asaph writing. These are exile songs. In fact, many of them are clearly referring to the Babylonian exile. Obviously, then Asaph could not have written those songs, because Asaph was a contemporary of David, and David lived 500 years before the exile. So but that doesn't mean that, essentially, somebody wrote these songs about the exile using the name of Asaph, or maybe coming from the school or tradition of Asaph. Not all of them are explicitly linked to the exile. Several of them are, though. Most of them are mourning songs. This tends to be like a dark stretch here. If you look at the narrative of the Psalms from start to finish, you can kind of see the progression of Israel's history from the establishment of the kingship onward. It's kind of like a microcosm of Israel's history from David on to the end of the Old Testament. Now again, each individual psalm is its own unit and its own complete thought, but arranging them in the way that they've been arranged allows a story to be told from beginning to end about the establishment of the kingship of Israel, through the fall of Israel, fall of Judah really specifically, and to the Babylonians. Not a lot of attention is paid to the northern kingdom of Israel. It's mostly because that's not where the kingship was, or the temple. It's mostly, almost entirely about the southern kingdom, where the temple and the kingship were. And now that has fallen. So this phase of the Psalms, the kingdom has fallen as an exile. So most of these Psalms are going to be mourning songs and are going to be attached to the Babylonian exile. But again, they can be applied to any kind of distressful circumstances we might find ourselves in. Okay, so Psalm 73, a psalm of Asaph. Excuse me. Psalm 73, a psalm of Asaph. Surely God is good to Israel, to those who are pure in heart. But as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold. So he had almost lost his faith. He came this close. For I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. They have no struggles. Their bodies are healthy and strong, or fat. They are free from the burdens common to man. They are not plagued by human ills. Therefore, pride is their necklace. They clothe themselves with violence. From their callous hearts comes iniquity. Iniquity. The evil conceits of their minds know no limits. They scoff and speak with malice. In their arrogance they threaten oppression. Their mouths lay claim to heaven, and their tongues take possession of the earth. So they say some boastful, prideful things. Therefore, the people turn to them and drink up waters in abundance. So they convince people. They get people to do what they want because they're very boastful, proud, very persuasive in their boasting and their lying and their arrogance. They say, how can God know? Does the Most High have knowledge? This is what the wicked are like. Always carefree. They increase in wealth. Like, how do you see that and not say to yourself, man, it just isn't worth it. Let's just go and be like them. Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure. In vain I have washed my hands in innocence. All day long I have been plagued. I have been punished every morning. So it's like if you try to be faithful and it doesn't seem to lead to any kind of material blessing or success, and then you have over here this crowd of people who are clearly not faithful, or not even pretending to be faithful, are boastful and arrogant, and speak it out loud. They are not claiming to be followers of God, and yet they're prosperous. They're healthy. They're strong. They're fat. They're well fed. Their needs are met. Their physical desires are satisfied, and they don't seem to have anything wrong with them. They don't seem to suffer any repercussions for their evil. It's like, what am I doing trying to be honest? What am I doing trying to have integrity? What am I doing trying to do things the right way? Why don't I just be like them? It's hard. And this guy dealt with it. He was this close, he said. I had almost slipped. And it's just, that is the problem. I mean, it's been the issue since the garden, when the serpent gave Adam and Eve an option to do things a different way, and they took it. That's the urge, that's the desire, that's the temptation. If I had said, I will speak thus, I will speak this way, if I had done it, if I'd actually gone ahead and done it, I almost did. I almost said these things. I almost put these thoughts out loud. I had these thoughts in my head. I almost put them on my tongue and spoke them out loud. If I had done that, I would have betrayed your children. So he didn't actually do it. He wanted to, he was close to it, he almost did it, but he didn't actually do it. If he had, he would have betrayed his fellow faithful followers of God in Israel. When I tried to understand all this, it was oppressive to me. But then I entered the sanctuary of God, and I understood their final destiny. So somehow or another, I don't know if he's talking about the tabernacle or the temple or even a literal space at all. He may, I don't know. And I don't know what happened to him there. I don't know what his revelation was there when he went to this place, whether it was a tabernacle or the temple or wherever it may have been. Maybe he was even just in his own mind. Maybe he just entered the dwelling place of God in his own thoughts. Wherever it was, he went. And whatever revelation he had there, something clicked with him. Something made sense to him that didn't make sense to him before. Surely you place them on slippery ground. You cast them down to ruin. How suddenly are they destroyed, completely swept away by terrors. As a dream when one awakes, so when you arise, O Lord, you will despise them as fantasies. So these people may seem to be on top of the mountain. They may seem to be kings of the world, but the ground underneath their feet is slippery. And in a moment, they can fall away out underneath them. I go back to the northern, now this is not referring specifically to the northern kingdom of Israel, but I always go back to this because it's such a good example or illustration of this. When Amos, the prophet, comes to talk to the people of the north, he's going there in about the year 750, somewhere between 755 and 750 BC, somewhere in that time frame. And they are at the peak of their power. Okay, they have a strong king. Jeroboam II is their king. He is the strongest of all their kings in the northern kingdom's history. He has stabilized the kingdom. He has expanded the borders. He has increased the commercial and economic wealth and prosperity of the nation. And they seem to be doing just fine. But Amos goes up there and he tells them all these things that they're doing wrong and the things that are going to happen to them because they're doing wrong. And they tell him to leave, and he does. Apparently he does leave. And once they go to tell him to leave, apparently he finishes his message and then he does leave and goes back to Judah, which is where he's from. And then 30 years later or so, the northern kingdom is gone. He was there in about the year 755 BC. In the year 722 BC, the kingdom is gone. Not just on the decline, it's gone. In 32 or so years, from the time Amos gave his message, the kingdom was gone completely. And during that time, they descended into a state of near anarchy as their kings came and went, and they were assassinated, and there were coups, and there were all these palace intrigues, and these plots, and these assassinations, Even for a while, there may have even been a rival kingdom set up in the north. Don't really know. It's kind of fuzzy, but it's possible. And then they lost territory to the Assyrians. So those last 30 years are not a fun 30 years. And then 30 years after Amos spoke his message, they were gone. And once it goes, it can go pretty quick. When Amos spoke his message, they were on the top of the world, peaceful and secure and prosperous. They didn't have any reason to listen to or want to believe in Amos's message. But just 30 years later, not only had they descended into anarchy and chaos and lost territory to enemies, all that had happened. In 30 years, they were gone. Completely gone. So once it goes, it can go quick. Once it starts to slip, it can slip very suddenly. And it will be a surprise. It could be a big surprise to those who are not ready for it. When the day of the Lord comes, if you're not ready for it, it's going to be a big surprise. When my heart was grieved and my spirit embittered, I was senseless and ignorant. I was a brute beast before you. But he was grieved and embittered, and because of that, he acted senselessly and ignorantly, like a vile brute animal. I've done that. I've been that way. There have been times in my life, and I remember this very vividly, when I was a brute beast before God. I was embittered. I was grieved. I was angry about all kinds of different things, and I was very senseless and ignorant. I was a brute beast before God. I know exactly what that's like. Yet I am always with you. You hold me by my right hand. You guide me with your counsel, and afterward you will take me into glory. Whom have I? And I don't know exactly if that's referring to resurrection or not. It may be. We'll see. Let's continue reading and see if we can get any further insight. Whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail. That sure sounds like your physical body, doesn't it? But God, now the flesh refers to your body, and your heart refers basically to your mind. When you see that term heart in Scripture, it's really referring to your intellect. They thought the heart was the seat of intellect back in those days. They thought the guts were the seat of emotion. Nowadays, you think of the heart as the seat of emotion, and the mind as the seat of intellect. Really, it all happens in the mind. I mean, all happens in the brain. But we think of it today as though you feel emotion in your heart, and you think rationally with your mind. In those days, you felt emotion in your guts, your bowels, which is why you see that reference to feeling it in your kidneys or in your bowels. And they thought that that was where the emotion was centered, and they thought that the brain, the intellect, the thinking power was in your heart. So a lot of times in Scripture, when you see heart, you have to remember that they're really referring to the thinking power of man, which is actually in the brain. So your body, you're my flesh and my heart. So that's basically my brain and my body. You know, it's like my physical body, my flesh, the stuff of the earth that I'm made out of, and my heart, my mind, my seat of intellect may fail. So my brain and my body may fail. But God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. So he does seem to be referring to some kind of belief in something that's going to happen to him even after he dies. God will be his portion and his strength even after his body and brain fail. Those who are far from you will perish. You destroy all who are unfaithful to you. But as for me, it is good to be near God. I have made the sovereign Lord my refuge. I will tell of all your deeds. Psalm 74, a maskil of Asaph. Why have you rejected us forever, O God? So we go right from expressing our confidence that God will be with us forever to asking him why he's rejected us forever. Why does your anger smolder against the sheep of your pasture? Remember the people you purchased of old, the tribe of your inheritance whom you redeemed, Mount Zion, where you dwelt. Turn your steps toward these everlasting ruins. So Mount Zion is in ruins right now. All this destruction the enemy has brought on the sanctuary. Your foes roared in the place where you met with us. They set up their standards as signs, those flags or emblems or banners, whatever they are. They put their flags, their banners, their emblems right in the place where God met with the people. The enemy has conquered Israel. They behave like men wielding axes to cut through a thicket of trees. They smashed all the carved paneling with their axes and hatchets. They burned your sanctuary to the ground. They defied the dwelling place of your name. They said in their hearts, "We will crush them completely." They burned every place where God was worshipped in the land. They wiped it all out. They wanted it gone. We are given no miraculous signs. No prophets are left. And none of us knows how long this will last. This is clearly an exile song, although he doesn't explicitly identify the Babylonians as the enemies in this case. How long will the enemy mock you, O God? Will the foe revile your name forever? Why do you hold back your hand, your right hand? Take it from the folds of your garment and destroy them. So God has put his hands in his pockets. Thinking of it in our context today, God has put his hands in his pockets and is deliberately not interfering. He is not doing anything to save the Israelites from their enemies. It'd be like someone, if you don't, when you have a situation when a guy puts his hands in his pockets and turns away and maybe starts whistling, okay, he's clearly signaling that he does not want to get involved in the situation. Let's say there's an argument happening, maybe even a fight happening, or some sort of problem brewing somewhere, and someone who could get involved in some way or another doesn't. He puts his hands in his pockets and he turns away and walks away and starts whistling or something. That's basically what the psalmist is saying God has done. He's put his hands in the folds of his garment, in other words, his pockets, and he's deliberately refraining from interfering, which we know about. We've read about that in the Old Testament. We read about that in Jeremiah and the Kings and Chronicles and in all kinds of prophetic books. He did not. He allowed the Babylonians to do it. In fact, he sent them. And it's like it was 100% his intent for that to happen. But you, O God, are my king from of old. You bring salvation upon the earth. It was you who split open the sea by your power. You who broke the heads of the monster in the waters. It was you who crushed the heads of Leviathan and gave him as food to the creatures of the desert. Of course, we don't read about any of this in Genesis, but this is a very common worldview and belief in this part of the world at this time. So this psalmist is taking this imagery that everybody in his time would have been familiar with, of the idea of there having been some gigantic sea monster that God killed, but when he made the world. Job refers to Leviathan as well. We see this reference to Leviathan in other places. A lot of people today want to try to say if that's referring to like a hippopotamus or something like that, or an alligator, but it's like, it's not. Okay, like this was the idea of God killing of the giant sea monster at the creation of the world was a very common belief in the world at this time. So Job and the psalmist and other places that are referring to that are simply referring to what people around them thought and believed. Now Genesis doesn't say this. Okay, in fact Genesis explicitly says that God made all the creatures of the sea. There were no sea monsters for him to create. He created them. Like there was no Leviathan for him to wrestle and destroy in order to make the world. But other parts of the Bible do seem to indicate that. And we just read. We don't need to pretend that it's referring to an alligator or a hippopotamus. It's not. It's referring to a gigantic sea monster that doesn't exist and has probably never actually existed. But it was based on the cultural worldview at that time. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to acknowledge that. It was you who opened up springs and streams. You who dried up the ever-flowing rivers. The day is yours, and yours also the night. You established the sun and moon. It was you who set all the boundaries of the earth. You made both summer and winter. Remember how the enemy has mocked you, O Lord, how foolish people have reviled your name. So he is appealing to God's power as the creator of all things to remind him to do something to restore the honor of his name in the sight of the enemies, the nations around them. Do not hand over the life of your dove to wild beasts. Do not forget the lives of your afflicted people forever. Have regard for your covenant, because haunts of violence fill the dark places of the land. Do not let the oppressed retreat in disgrace. May the poor and needy praise your name. Rise up, O God, and defend your cause. Remember how fools mock you all day long. Do not ignore the clamor of your adversaries, the uproar of your enemies, which rises continually. So when the people of God, when the enemies are attacking the people of God and winning, okay, the Babylonians won in 586 BC, and the bad guys won in that instance. That, yes, it hurts the people who are being affected by it, but it also hurts God, because God's name is now sullied. His reputation is tarnished in the sight of the people, not just the people of God, and not even just the enemies who attack them, but in the sight of all people around. When God's people are being defeated by their enemies, that is a blemish on God's own name. Now again, as we read before, it happened because of their own unfaithfulness. God was ultimately using it and for his own purposes. But that's not the way it looked to the people at the time. That's not the way it looked to the psalmist. And he's telling God, you've got to do something, God. You can't let the enemies get away with this. You can't let them seem to win the day on this matter. You can't let your name and reputation be dispersed like this.